What do you think about the
No,
new
but that's your
FOIA and the
daughter.
videos coming out?
Well, I hope they all come out soon.
You're
What do
hopeful
you
for them to come out?
Yeah, I want all of them to come out.
Gypsy's not worried?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think that it's important for everyone to see everything.
Keep making content.
Hey friends, straight out of context, Barb shared some more information with me that she had gotten quite a while back, and other people had been over, but I personally hadn't. So thank you, Barb. I really appreciate that. And I wanted to go over it with y'all. It is Dee Dee's official autopsy. Like I always say, I don't personally have any medical training, so I may not understand exactly what I'm reading. And if any of y'all do, I'd love for you to educate me in the comments. So here is the receipt where Barb paid for her copy on September 9th, 2024. And here they list the final diagnosis of the postmortem examination of the body of Claudine Blanchard. Investigation to date reports that Miss Claudine Blanchard was found lying prone in her bed at her residence. Miss Claudine Blanchard was pronounced dead at the scene at 3:13 p.m. on June 14th, 2015. Medical history of asthma, gastroesophageal reflux disease, thyroid disease, diabetes, headache, hyperlipidemia, and endometrial cancer. That blew me away. And I initially wondered, are they getting that endometrial cancer from a medical history that they read that Dee Dee just wrote down, or is this from actual records? Hopefully they tell us later on. Surgical history of hernia repair, appendectomy, tonsillectomy, hysterectomy, and I don't know how to pronounce that one, friends. Cholecystectomy? I don't know. Autopsy findings of multiple stab wounds and multiple incised wounds. Toxicology, non-contributory. Then it says at the bottom, it is my opinion that Claudine Blanchard, a 48-year-old white female, died of injuries to the neck, back, chest, and abdomen due to multiple, 17, stab wounds and multiple incised wounds. Her manner of death is ruled a homicide. And the first few paragraphs here just go over law and the facts of how she was found. We know that. Down here it says, medical records dated June 2nd, 2015 indicated that the decedent had a past medical history of asthma, gastroesophageal reflux disease, thyroid disease, diabetes, headache, hyperlipidemia, and endometrial cancer. She had a surgical history of hernia repair, appendectomy, tonsillectomy, hysterectomy, and that word I can't say again. Her prescription medications were not listed in the medical record. It was reported that that medications at the scene were collected by Greene County Sheriff's Office. So I wonder what these medical records were from June 2nd, 2015. We know that a few days before the murder, Dee Dee took Gypsy to the emergency room, I believe, to have something seen about her feeding tube. But I wonder what these are. The June 2nd, 2015, because that sounds like a record maybe for Dee Dee. And interestingly, I know Ashley and Audrey have been going through the search records. I personally haven't gotten to them yet because there's just so much information. I'm finding something new all the time before I could move on to something else. But they found where in May 2015, Dee Dee was searching all kinds of specialists and transplant doctors and not oncologists, what was it? A thoracic surgeon, whatever that is. And she was looking at the Aurora St. Luke's Medical Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It says the body was received in a body bag that was secured with tamper-evident seal and that was marked with the decedent's identifying information. The body measured 5 feet 2 inches in length and weighed 255 pounds. Clothed in a white nightshirt with floral print. That's interesting because Gypsy said she was wearing a white nightshirt with floral print in one of her texts to Nick. There were multiple cuts in the upper back of the nightshirt, and these defects corresponded to the positions of stab wounds on the back of the decedent's body. The upper front of the nightshirt was bloody, as was all the back of the nightshirt. There was a religious pendant on a string necklace that was about the neck. Cuts in the necklace corresponded to cuts on the back of the decedent's neck. Paper evidence bags were in place over the hands. Then it tells how everything was swabbed. Then we get to the evidence of injury. There were 17 stab wounds. For purposes of description, the stab wounds are numbered 1 through 17. The numbering is arbitrary and not intended to indicate the order in which the wounds were received. 1. Behind the top of the left shoulder, orient longitudinally 1 inch on the skin surface. Center of the wound is 8.5 inches below the top of the head. 4 5/8 inches to the left posterior midline. Sharp upper end, sharp lower end. Wound direction is back to front. Wound trace is 3 1/8 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle, ends on the posterior surface of a left upper rib. Oh, God. Then it says center of upper back, 5/8 inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 1.5 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. Left side of the upper back, oriented obliquely, 1 3/4 inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front, left to right, and downward. Wound track is 5 inches deep through skin, fat, and muscle of the chest wall to where it penetrates into the left chest through muscles of the third left intercostal space, perforates the upper edge of the lower lobe of the left lung at the oblique fissure, then perforates the inferior portion of the upper lobe of the left lung. Perforates the posterior wall of the pericardial sac, perforates the posterior wall of the left atrium of the heart next to the mitral valve. I think that is something that I believe Becca talked about before and said it accounted for the reason why you don't see as much blood spatter and spray as you might expect, because that caused a lot of the bleeding internally. I might be misremembering that. I hope not. Okay, the next one says, oriented somewhat longitudinally, 7/8 inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 1 1/4 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. Then we have another one, 1 inch on skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 2 3/4 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle of the chest, enters right pleural cavity through the muscles of the fifth right intercostal space next to the spine, where the wound track continues for another 3 inches, perforates the lower lobe of the right lung, then perforates the right side of the diaphragm and penetrates into the posterior portion of the right lobe of the liver. Ugh, it's making me feel sick. Okay, center of upper back, oriented longitudinally, 1 5/8 of an inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front and downward. Wound track 2.5 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle of the chest wall, enters the right pleural cavity through the muscles of the right sixth intercostal space next to the spine, continues another 1.5 inches as it penetrates into the posterior surface of the lower lobe of the right lung. Center of the middle back has 2 components making it somewhat L-shaped. Longitudinal portion 3/4 inches on the skin surface. Transverse portion is 1/2 inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 1 3/4 inches deep as it passes through skin, fat, and muscle of the chest wall, enters into the right pleural cavity, muscles of the ninth intercostal space next to the spine, where the wound track continues for another 1/8 inch as it penetrates the posterior surface of the lower lobe of the right lung. Right side of the upper back, 1 3/4 inch of the skin surface. So many of them are 1 3/4 inch on the skin surface, it seems like. Does that seem weird to anyone else? Like I said, I'm not trained in what I'm reading, not trained in interpreting it. So we're just reading it and discussing it, friends. Let me know what y'all think. Wound direction is back to front, right to left, and downward. Wound track is 4.5 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. Oriented obliquely, 1 1/8 inch on skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 4.5 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. 1 1/4 inch on surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 5.5 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. 1 1/8 inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 3 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. 1 inch on surface. Wound direction back to front. Wound track is at least 7 inches deep, perforate the skin, fat, and muscle of the body wall. Penetrates into the right chest cavity, penetrates 1/4 inch into the posterior surface, the lower lobe of the right lung. Far side of the upper back, superior to the right axilla. 3/4 inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 4 1/4 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. Another 1.5 inch on the skin surface. It says wound direction is right to left. Not back to front like the others. Wound track is 4.5 inches deep, passed through skin, fat, and muscle of the body wall. Wound track then continued another 3 inches as it passed through the lower recesses of the right pleural cavity, then perforates at the base of the lower lobe of the right lung, then perforates through the lateral edge of the diaphragm, and then penetrates to the right lobe of the liver. Okay, so that was the first one that didn't say wound direction is back to front. I'm going to make note of that. We've got one so far. Looks like same for the next one here. It says 1/2 inch on skin surface. Wound direction is downward. Wound track is 1.5 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. That's 2. It says in association with the 6 stab wounds that penetrated into the chest, There were 250 milliliters of blood and clots in the right chest cavity. There were 500 milliliters of blood and clots in the left chest cavity. There were 100 milliliters of blood and clots in the pericardial cavity. In association with the 2 stab wounds continued through the diaphragm and into the liver, there was a trace amount of blood in the liver in the peritoneal cavity. Okay, then on the neck wounds, we're back to front again. It says 3/8 inch on the skin surface. Wound direction is back to front. Wound track is 2 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. This one, 1.5 inch again on the skin surface. Wound direction is downward. So we get another one that's not back to front. That makes 3. Wound track is 3 1/4 inches deep, passes through skin, fat, and muscle. It says there were multiple incised wounds on the neck, and there was one incised wound on the left hand. I didn't know there was one on the left hand. Did y'all, friends? Transversely across the back of the neck, 7 inches below the top of the head, the wound is 7 1/8 inch in length, penetrates up to 3 inches into the soft tissues of the neck to end in the space between the spinous processes of cervical vertebrae 6 and 7. We got that cut got almost to her spine and her neck. And then it says transversely on the left side of the back of the neck, there's another wound 6 inches below the top of the head. So it's about 1 inch above the other one. It says it's 3/4 inch in length and is superficial. A scratch. A scratch, friends. Right there, a scratch. I think we all remember, was it Ruby or Demona said her specialty is scratching. Interesting. And it says obliquely on the right side of the neck, inferior to the lower jaw. On the skin surface, the wound is 4.5 inches. Center of the wound is 6.5 inches below the top of the head. Anterior end of the wound is forked, indicating that the 4.5 inch wound had been produced by at least 2 cutting motions. The wounds penetrate 3 1/4 inches into the soft tissues of the neck to end on the right side of the cervical spine. This is a lot of cuts on the neck, friends, and a scratch. Transversely on the right side of the neck, there are multiple long, parallel, superficial cuts. The center of the cluster of cuts is 7 3/4 inches below the top of the head and is 4 3/4 inches to the right of the posterior midline of the neck. I've seen the unredacted pictures of Dee Dee. There was a time period whenever someone posted them on Reddit. I think it was in 2024, and they were posted with no redaction or trigger warnings to where if you looked up Dee Dee at that time, you could come across them accidentally. But I really don't want to go looking at them again to see if I think that these are fingernail scratches or not. These multiple long parallel superficial cuts on her neck, because the pictures of Dee Dee's face and neck were really, really disturbing. So yeah. It says on the left hand, there is a superficial cut, 3/8 inch in length. The cut is on the radial side of the dorsal aspect of the 4th digit. Interesting. How would ever her hand have gotten cut? I guess maybe if she was trying to actually fight off the stabbing. That makes sense. So I'm not going to read the entire description here of Dee Dee's body, but something I thought was interesting is they're noting scars. They're noting exactly where the scars are, how big they are, that type of thing, and the tattoos. Tattoo on left side of the back, tattoos on lateral sides of the lower parts of the leg. One of those was her wizard and pentagram star that I've told y'all about. Then it says a 6.5 inch longitudinal scar on the back lower part of the left leg. The extremities and back had no significant deformities or other abnormalities. There was nail polish on the fingernails and toenails. Now, the reason why I'm pointing that out so pointedly is because in her book, Gypsy wrote that she found Dee Dee carving the word pain, or no, that her and Dee Dee were taking a bath together, and she saw a big puffed up scar on Dee Dee's arm where she had carved the word pain into her arm, and that she kissed it and cried, and Dee Dee told her that it makes the pain feel better. Well, we've been thinking that that was probably a lie because there was no scar like that noted on Dee Dee's autopsy. And if there was, it definitely would have been noted, and the type of scar that Gypsy described wouldn't have been gone away, I don't think, by the time of Dee Dee's death. Here it says, except for the apparently remote surgical absence of the appendix, gallbladder, uterus, ovaries, and fallopian tubes, all the viscera were in their normal anatomical positions. So Dee Dee had all those removed, it sounds like. It says Dee Dee's heart was enlarged. And it sounds like everything else looked pretty much normal with her heart. Nothing wrong with her lungs other than being stabbed, it sounds like. Liver was excessively firm due to hepatic fibrosis and also had a parenchyma. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that all wrong, friends. That was yellow, tan, and greasy from fatty change. The gallbladder was surgically absent. The remainder of the biliary tract was unremarkable. I remember hearing something about liver disease with Dee Dee, but I don't know what that means exactly. Maybe it will be elaborated on later on. Esophagus, stomach, small bowel, and colon unremarkable. Appendix not present. Stomach had 300 grams of contents consisting of food. No pills were seen among the stomach contents. Pancreas had a pallor and a firm tan lobulated parenchyma. Again, that word I can't say again, friends. I'm not sure what that means. Endocrine system. Thyroid gland had a normal bilobate configuration. The adrenal glands were each unremarkable with golden letter yellow cortices and brown medullas. The pituitary gland was unremarkable. Genitourinary system. The right and left kidneys weighed 120 grams and 125 grams respectively. Each kidney had smooth cortical surfaces, otherwise normal regions and papillae. There were no changes. The uterus, fallopian tubes, and ovaries were surgically absent. Then it goes to the toxicological analysis. They sent samples of vitreous fluid, pericardial cavity blood, and liver to the St. Louis University Forensic Toxicology Laboratory for screens and analysis. Screening of the blood was negative for drugs of abuse. No alcohols were detected in the blood. And here they give a breakdown of the wounds and separate, deep wounds from the non-deep ones. This says concluding opinion is that Claudine Blanchard, a 48-year-old white female, died of injuries to the neck, back, chest, and abdomen due to multiple 17 stab wounds and multiple incised wounds. And that is the end. Well, I hope one of you with more experience in understanding this than me can tell me whether or not it sounds like to y'all that they saw on medical record actual evidence of her having endometrial cancer. Because I can't tell, like I said, if this is something they saw where Dee Dee just randomly wrote it in a history, or if it was an actual legit record that they saw. If Dee Dee did have cancer at the time of her death, it's wild that she kept the attention focused on Gypsy, saying Gypsy had cancer while she was going through it herself. I don't know. I don't know what to think, friends. Let me know what y'all think in the comments, because I feel confused. There is a Facebook message that I've been deeply wondering about. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, I found it. Let me show y'all this. It's something I've been wondering about. This is from Into the Weeds FOIA. It is a Facebook chat between Nick Godejohn and Nicholas Bellarose. And here at the end, we have Nick Godejohn saying, "Okay, dear. Well, she don't believe in something that could kill off that type of cancer. So really, if she tries the other ways that the doctors would mention, she would only be hurting herself more, dear. So really, there's not much I could say about that, hun. Hurt." And I don't know exactly what he meant, but that is just about a week and a half before the murder, June 3rd, 2015. So it sounds like maybe Gypsy was telling him that her mom had some sort of cancer. And we also know from other Facebook records that Gypsy was trying to get her mom to do natural medicine and go off of her meds. So anyway, that's just another aspect to this that I wanted to throw out there, friends. But we will go out with a palate cleanser, and please let me know what y'all think in the comments, because I'm not sure what to think. I am confused, and this happens a lot with this case. It's like the more we learn, the more we know, the more we don't know. Anyway, I hope you're all having a good day.
Keep making content.